All right. Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of Mindset of a Champion. Today, I'm joined by Pete Rubish. Pete, would you like to introduce yourself, man?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I'm 29 years old now. I've been powerlifting for the last 15 years. I was on anabolic steroids for about 9 years straight, and now I'm just kind of like segueing into some natural lifting and trying to get my health in order. And I started when I was 14. I started in my parents' basement, as everybody knows. My dad kind of got me into training because he got some weight equipment, nothing too crazy. And he didn't like push me to do it or anything, but I just saw him doing it and I wanted to give it a shot. So I did the whole bench and abs type, training split that a lot of young guys do. And then eventually I started doing like squats and deadlifts, and I fell in love with getting stronger. And I was always kind of an isolated person, very introverted. Didn't have any friends in high school. Basically kept to myself. Like I literally would read the newspaper at lunch by myself, and there would be one other kid at the table, and he would be reading a book. So like we weren't, and I just would go home after school and lift, and I did that every weekend and every weekday even. Never went out and partied or anything, and it was just kind of my outlet. So obviously, I just kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I didn't wasn't good with girls or anything, and that fueled me to get stronger and improve my physique and almost this self protection mechanism of like trying to be more intimidating and look better, be stronger. So over early on, it was more of like rage fueled, and I really had um, some angst towards the world, and I wasn't happy with where I was at. I wanted to be better, and then kind of as life started to become more stable over the last couple of years, I kind of got away from that, where I literally couldn't draw upon the anger. It wasn't even possible. Like if I would try to get mad, it didn't work because there was nothing to get mad about. So my whole philosophy on life kind of calmed down. And whereas before, over the last, from that age of 14 till even 28, all I cared about were hitting higher numbers, and I would do so at whatever cost. Now it's almost like, I realize it's not worth it. Your health is the most important thing you got to hold on to in life. And I've kind of transitioned away from that. So it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been really fascinating to kind of see how you've progressed over that time. And especially like as you mentioned your younger self, right? When you were in high school, you're this introverted kid, didn't speak to anyone, wasn't, so socially confident. And yet when we see those videos of you in the basement, those iconic videos, right? You're a completely different man. You're an absolute animal, screaming along, ripping weights off the floor no one could fathom, right? So it's really cool to see how you kind of catalyze your confidence and your self-belief just in those training sessions when you were younger.
Yeah, it was my only outlet really. Like I didn't drink alcohol or anything. I didn't go out to parties, didn't hang out with any friends or anything. So it was my motivation, it was my passion, it was what gave me an outlet. It made my life better as far as that. And so I just love pushing myself. I love struggling. And I kind of use it as a metaphor for life. So and even when I was younger, I did a marathon when I was like 14 or 15, I can't remember. I did a bodybuilding show and dieted for like 22 weeks. Like I always was trying to challenge myself to try to get better, to try to get mentally stronger, because that's what it was all about to me. I was like obsessed with becoming mentally stronger, which I felt like would make me physically stronger and make my life better.
When you were doing that, when you were focusing solely on numbers and admittedly crushing those numbers, right? You correlated being strong, right, with being happier and making your life better. Did you find that to be true at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely like I put all my self worth into training and the numbers I could hit. And what happened was as I got stronger, I got all these opportunities to like travel the world. So on other people's dime. So I got to go to like France a couple times. I got to go to California. I got to go to Nova Scotia, Canada. I got to trade. Well, I got to go to all these places I never could have imagined. And like people respected me. People gave me a lot more attention. Like everybody kind of treated me differently. So as I got stronger and I got more of this treatment, it fueled me even more. I was just like feeding off it. Um, And that just it was my entire self worth was wrapped up in the powerlifting. Whereas now that's not the case at all. I can enjoy it a little more, and it's more of a pure thing now because my numbers aren't as good, and there's not all the attention anymore, so to speak. And it's just it's enjoyable. It's not like the end all be all.
Right. It's an interesting paradox, isn't it? With it, when something is the end all be all, you put everything into it, so inevitably you do get a lot of things out, right? As you say, it facilitated opportunities for you to travel, meet people, and obviously you get a lot of respect and positivity for that. You know, you developed an audience and so forth, right? But when everything is attached to that, when that thing starts to take less of a precedent in your life, or you, for whatever reason it loses its significance, or you fall out of love with it a little bit, it starts, you know, you start to scramble for self meaning. And I recall you starting to talk about that quite a bit a few years ago, where you started to reflect on your philosophies in life. What would you say motivated that change?
I honestly think a lot of it is just growing up and maturing, where it's like when I was younger, I didn't have all the bills and life responsibilities. Whereas now it's like there's a lot more bills, a lot more responsibilities. I can't just put my entire focus into powerlifting and throw everything out the window. Whereas I used to, like relationships, everything, they were just a side thing, and my focus was entirely on getting stronger. Nothing else mattered. So that's how I got into like doing trend stuff because trend makes you very selfish, where nothing matters and it gets you the strongest and stuff like that. And there was no balance. Where so I used to think balance was stupid and for losers and for normal people. Whereas now I kind of lean into it and I embrace it because I realize overall your life happiness is so much better with that balance.
Yeah, that is an interesting one as well, isn't it? When there isn't any balance present, you almost create a reality in which, you know, it's silly for balance to be present, right? You know, as you say, it's for normal people or for losers, and I'm not that person, so it justifies the lack of balance, right? But then inevitably, when things start to get a little bit out of control, as you said, with performance enhancers and with the kind of the endless cycle of training that, let's be honest, is pretty brutal, right? Balance becomes a little bit more a little bit more of a positive prospect, right?
Yeah, and you make a good point. Like people will justify anything to themselves. I mean, I did it. Everybody does it. All these lifters are doing it. You're just justifying um, what you're doing to your body basically by just getting stronger and putting burying your feet in the sand because a lot of people and I was the same way. I'm not saying I'm any better, but nobody wants to get blood work done. Nobody wants to keep track of their health because they know it's not going to be good. They don't want to see it. You don't want to know how much damage you're doing to your body, so you just kind of like ignore it and pretend it's not really there. So it's just, I mean, bodybuilders are no better. Strongmen, as you said, everybody does that, but it's just one of the things I wish I could change more about the way people go about things is just really getting the labs done every month or even every other month and just trying to be healthy at the same time while getting stronger. Like if you prioritize your health as much as you do getting stronger, you're going to be in far better shape and you're going to live a long life. Whereas for so many years, it was all about just being stronger. So I'm trying to get it where people are like, you value your health just as much, if not more.
Yeah, and it is a very, it's a very interesting and admirable turnaround to start to, you know, have that perspective, especially given that, you know, it is a very distinct contrast, right, to how you thought for a number of years. It's almost the opposite. You are introducing balance where before no balance was present. But you mentioned before, you know, the reason that you committed to training as an absolute, and you went into the realm of performance enhancers and was quite reckless, as you said. The goal was to be as strong as possible, right? For
Yes.
you, was there a ceiling for that? Was there a grand goal or something you wanted to accomplish, or was it just a continuous process?
I always wanted to deadlift 1,000 pounds, which I think is like 460 kilos, somewhere around there. I always wanted to deadlift that much, and I don't think I'm ever going to get there, truthfully, but I'm at peace with that. That was one of the main goals, and just, I mean, that was really the main focus. There was never, for the most part, there was never like these numbers that I wanted to attain. Other than that, it's just kind of just let's get as strong as possible and keep pushing it. but that the cost it would take now, I don't deem it worth it. So I still want to pull 410 kilos in a competition. I still want to do that at some point, and I'm not ignorant enough to think that I won't have to do some kind of a cycle to get there. But I'm going to try to get there as safely as possible. So that's kind of where my goal has shifted from like pulling 460 kilos to like let's pull 410 and try to do it um, in a much safer manner without sacrificing my health.
So and that in of itself is interesting, right? You are starting to blend the balance of, you know, consciousness around your health, with still having a passion and desire to get stronger and train. Because a lot of these guys, as you've described, the ones especially who are, you know, aggressively reckless with that all or nothing mentality, it literally is that, right? All or nothing. So if you aren't putting in all of the stuff, all of the drugs, all of the training intensity, then it's nothing. You quit and you go and play golf or something, right? So it's interesting that you're kind of still, you still have these, you know, that's a 900-pound deadlift, right? So still massive aspirations even with this change in perspective.
Yeah, and I think like realistically, if I could get to like 365 kilos naturally, I think I'd have a shot at 410 on a mild cycle. So I know like I have steps along the way of like where I want to get. Like on bench, I want to get to a 200 kilo bench naturally, and then I could potentially hit like 227 and a half kilos when I'm on a cycle. So I still want to do maybe like one or two cycles over the years, but I'm gonna prepare for them much longer and much better, and really take care of myself. So
So you're almost building up your natural strength and your like your natural joint integrity and your overall uh, body health alongside progressing with milder cycles, if I understand that correctly.
yeah, as of now, I'm leaning towards doing a mild cycle again at some point, but that could change. We'll see. But nothing like I used to. And after I would do a cycle, I'd come right off again. So it's just it's a little different mindset. I'm not opposed to it, but I just want to do it in a much different manner.
Okay. And again, that I think that's a great example of kind of where you are now, right, with regards to steroids and the dangers and the, you know, you, as I know now, you've kind of gone cold turkey a little bit, right? You don't necessarily have to maintain such an extreme position of abstinence, but you can still flirt with the middle ground without getting pulled back into your old ways as well. So another example of balance, effectively.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have a problem doing like a cycle with mild stuff like anavar, and testosterone, and then getting off again. Whereas before, like it was just running stronger compounds for longer periods of time. But that doesn't really interest me anymore. And one of the biggest shifts mentally, as far as my mindset, is that I'm not trying to compete with other people anymore. Like I look at it like I don't care what anybody else is doing. We're all on our own journeys,
Mhm.
and I just want to hit numbers that are significant to me. So whereas before I was trying to hang with these people, and the only way to do that is to push your body with exorbitant drug use. Now I'm just like I'm not trying to compete with you guys. You're on your own path. And I look at it like this. I look at it like my health is better than 99% of those people I would be competing against. So who's really winning if I'm much healthier and I might not be quite as strong, but I'm not going to die as early, things like that. So I think people just need to reevaluate their priorities. Do you really want to throw it all away and die at age 60 or die at age 50 just by trying to get as strong as possible? Because I mean, it's easy to think you don't think about these things when you're in your 20s, but at some point it's gonna come to a head and you're gonna realize like it may not be worth it. So
Yeah, and I definitely I recall you saying something similar in that video that you when you spoke about the culture of powerlifting in of itself, pushing and pushing and pushing with no regard for where you might be in 10, 20 years. So it's interesting that you know you prioritize health as a variable alongside your strength and how well you do in competitions. Which in turn you know allows you to enjoy the process a lot more because there's something to attach your progress to that isn't just how strong I am on the platform.
yeah, it's just literally maturing in life, and I know that a lot of guys are gonna push it in their 20s, and I did. So I'm literally no better than anybody out there. Like I did all that. I did what these guys I see now are doing, who are your age, 22, 23, 24. So I completely understand. I just, in hindsight, I wish I could get people to evaluate their health more efficiently at a younger age, like take it more seriously right away. That's what I wish I would have done. So I'm kind of trying to push people into like, all right, you got to balance, you got to have the strength, and that's cool. But take a look at your labs, get consistent labs, and keep that stuff dialed in as well.
Right. And you use the word maturity, right? Which, is indicative of where you are now. But when you were going through those phases where you were abusing the PEDs and you were just focused on that, bigger number, was it a sudden epiphany that led you to think, geez, I need to kind of reevaluate and potentially grow? Or was it a gradual kind of disillusionment with the lifestyle that you were leading?
I think it was honestly more of like a sudden epiphany where I was like, man, I've been burying my head in the sand for so long that I don't know what, I know my health can't be that good. And not, it wasn't terrible, but I was like, I got to change some things, or I'm going to be one of these guys who passes away. I didn't think I was ever going to pass away before age 50 or anything, but I'm like, I want to live to be 80. So it's just, I saw a lot of guys, a lot of bodybuilders die as well. And one guy who I was around was Dallas Carver, and we were the same age. Our birthdays are like a month apart. And he was this really great bodybuilder who was going to win Mr. Olympia at some point, and he died at age 26. And that's kind of, I had seen him for, years. I'd seen him in person, and it just kind of like freaked me out because I'm like, nobody is safe no matter the age. If you do enough, that could be you. So he passed away from a massive heart attack at age 26, and that kind of woke me up.
Right. So it was somewhat of a shock, people around you succumbing to similar lifestyles that you were leading. Obviously, Dallas being a particularly, media focused one as well, because it was another big bodybuilder death, wasn't it, at the time? I think Rich Piana wasn't too far before that as well. That shocked you into change. So what then enabled you to kind of separate yourself from the mindset of, okay, I need to be as strong as possible?
Because my body was starting to break down anyway. Like I've been doing this for 15 years, over half my life, and like my body was not cooperating like it once used to. I used to be able to go in the gym and just train, and now I was constantly dealing with injuries, and I couldn't push my body as hard. And I started to just realize I'm like, I'm at the end of the road here for what I've done. I'm kind of nearing the end of my career here. So I needed to get my mind right to be able to accept that. It's like when an athlete, a football player, is really good. They're at the top, and then at the end of their career, they're like, all right, I can't, I'm not the same. I'm not as good anymore. And they get cut by the team, or they have to accept the reality that they are no longer the man. And I had to accept my reality that I was no longer the man. There were guys who were better. There was the new crop coming up who was 7 years younger than me, who was beating me. And I had to accept that I was no longer at the top and my career was coming to a close. I had to deal with that. And that was very hard to deal with. That was something that took years to finally come to terms with. And so that's the biggest thing I think a lot of people deal with, no matter what the sport, as you said. Like you're only at the top for so long. You only have that 15 minutes of fame for so long, and it's like it's all going to come to an end at some point. You have to have other things in life that give you value, or otherwise it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it is really that all eggs in one basket metaphor, where you, as we said earlier, right? If every possible thing is focused and attached to that outcome, once that outcome changes, and inevitably it will, right? Because just entropy inevitably plays its role, right? How do you then reconcile with yourself, your identity, as you say, the fact you're no longer the man?
Yeah, and
How,
you're used to all these things getting thrown at you and all this attention and all this fame, and then it's gone. It's like it's all there and then it just disappears. And you have to and it can put you into this depression. So you have to find a way mentally to pivot. You have to be able to pivot to something else. So now I'm like, I still obviously have goals that would be stronger than I've ever been, but I'm more realistic about them. And I put a lot more of my focus into coaching and getting other people stronger. So for me now, I get a lot more enjoyment than I used to out of seeing my guys get stronger, my clients. Whereas before it was just more focused on myself. Like I had clients, but I wasn't as excited about when they would PR or anything. Whereas now I'm like, I got clients who are stronger than me right now. And it's just, I'm good with that. And it brings me enjoyment to see them better themselves and like having a family, being married, things like that. So I get enjoyment out of these other things.
Yeah, you've been able to kind of reallocate the energy that drove you to be a great athlete into other facets of life, and as you say, you've created a degree of balance that you didn't have before. Um, but when it was raw, when you were just starting to come to terms with the fact that you had to step away and that you weren't the man, what did you do to start to process that?
I don't even know if I did anything. I think it just, first it's almost like the stages of grieving, or I was like angry about where I was at and that I couldn't be what I used to be and that my body was starting to fail me. And then it was acceptance. I finally got to a stage after a while of like, okay, this is what it is. And now I'm just at complete peace with it. So I don't know if that was God or something starting to transform me, because I'm very spiritual and religious as far as that goes. Like I've always believed in God, but I think I now am like more like He's starting to make my path correct because I'm abiding in things better with that. So I think that might have played a role, but it wasn't, there were no tangible steps. It was just something I had to go through go through those lumps and figure it out along the way. So it's been almost like a 3 year thing now where I've kind of been starting to see my strength go downhill or whatever. And I've had to just go through it all, go through the storm and figure it out.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think that is a very admirable path to choose, right? It definitely is the path of most resistance emotionally. You have to confront the reality of where you are now, as you say, treating it like a trauma. I think that that's a really good way to address injury, actually, to treat it as a trauma, like you said, the stages of grief where the disbelief, the anger, and then eventually the ability to redirect some of that energy and move it forward, which you said you catalyzed through your faith. The fact that there
Yes.
was a purpose, there was something for you to now, a new path, a new trajectory for you to kind of progress with, even though that last chapter of powerlifting was starting to close.
That's it. You nailed it 100%. That's basically exactly how I would summarize it. Like it's almost like I've been saying lately. I get as excited about blood work PRs as I did about lifting PRs, because I'm like, every month when I get those labs and I see that my kidneys are functioning at 100% and that I'm just getting healthier every month, it's very exciting to me because I know I'm extending my lifespan. I know I'm not gonna have to worry about a lot of things as much. Not to say something couldn't happen, but um, it's very rewarding for me now to be like as healthy as possible while getting as strong as possible. So these goals are in conjunction with one another rather than just one thing at a time. And another guy, like I saw like Boston Lloyd, like I like him a lot, and seeing him like go through kidney failure where his kidneys are functioning at like 15%. It's like I don't want to end up like that. So my kidney function is like 98%, and like his is like 15. And I see that and I'm like, I don't want to end up like that. And it kind of wakes you up. And one of the things I will say that I did correct, not really, it was just by luck. I never took growth hormone and I never took insulin. And the reason why that's such a big deal is growth hormone and insulin are they're much more responsible for cancer than pure anabolic androgenic steroids. So growth hormone and insulin will spike your chances of cancer growth significantly, because what they do is they act on the IGF-1 mechanism. They spike your IGF-1, and IGF-1 creates cell growth to a great degree. So that's how a lot of bodybuilders have much greater chance at cancer. Dallas had cancer. A lot of guys have cancer, and it's from that growth hormone and insulin. So I'm glad I never did that because those would have greatly accelerated my odds of cancer, and at least I had that going for me. So I would never, for anybody, I would recommend never touching GH or insulin. Not worth it. Like even if you're gonna do anabolics, don't take growth hormone, don't take insulin, stay away from that kind of stuff. You do not want cancer, guys. It's very serious. Like it's a death sentence in a lot of ways, depending on what type you have. So it's not something to play around with. And why would you want to increase your chances of that? So I really would stay away from those two specifically.
So, in hindsight, then of course you've had a few, moments of relief where you've seen, unfortunately tragic circumstances befall other people, and now you can celebrate a little bit more the fact that you are where you are now and that you've made the decisions you've made. And it's interesting that you said, you get excited over blood work PRs, and you've really shifted your lens of what makes you satisfied and happy when it comes to the training journey, right? Now being healthy, having those blood markers where you want them to be, whilst continuing to train and still, pursue those goals, that generates a similar kind of satisfaction and enthusiasm, if I understand this right, to what you were getting from being a top level powerlifter whilst being very unhealthy, admittedly.
Oh, 100%. I remember going into meets where I felt terrible. Like I knew I wasn't healthy at all. You could tell by my skin, you could tell by how I felt, getting out of breath. Like you knew it was bad, and you just kind of try to ignore it. And I just want to set a good example for other guys now. I want to kind of like help pave the way for the new generation of like, don't just throw your health out the window to get strong. You can still focus on getting strong, but monitor everything, take the right natural supplements, do cardio on a consistent basis. Don't let your weight get out of control. These kind of things. So I'm kind of trying to pioneer a new movement where it's like your health matters and you can still focus on getting stronger. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do them together. So that's what I really want the message for people now to be. You don't just have to be unhealthy to be strong.
Awesome. No, I really respect that, and I think it's awesome to have someone in the community with a voice like yours who has the experience that you do, right? And then combined with, I think, the more readily available information on anabolics now, hopefully that dream will become more of a reality for the new generation, man. So I commend you for that. The next thing I'd like to ask you though is, you've spoken a lot about the physical negatives of taking performance enhancing drugs. What would you like to touch a little bit on the mental aspect of your journey through the anabolic world?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing really is just certain compounds, mainly like tren and halotestin, will mentally change your brain chemistry quite a bit. So actually, any anabolic steroid will change your brain chemistry to a degree. But I didn't have any issues with serious mental issues, with the exception of Tren Ace. Tren Ace I ran all the time because it got me stronger than anything. And people get so strong on Tren. Tren is the main thing everybody takes in strength sports. But it comes at a price. Like I've heard countless stories. I can't even tell you guys, probably 2 dozen stories of people having varying relationship issues and cheating or getting in fights all the time due to Tren. Like Tren is a relationship killer. It will turn your world upside down. Paranoia, aggression, Jekyll and Hyde attitude, serious anger issues. It's like a train wreck. So that one, and then halotestin can be that same way. As far as me with halotestin, I responded better to it, where I just was irritable, but I wasn't really like pissed off all the time. I was just a little irritable. It wasn't like the craziness of trend, but it can also do that for some people. It can make people very angry. So those are really the main two where you get that. Whereas other things didn't really affect me that way. Anadrol can make you angry as well. and really any hard androgenic substance. But it's just trend specifically. You got to be very careful with that one because that one can get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, having mentioned that, there's something I'm curious about from your own experiences. Would you say that the obviously there is a physiological component of trend affecting your brain, right? Or these heavy androgens affecting your brain. But
Yes,
would you say that the behavior you exhibit from taking that is something that's, part of your own personality that's just dialed up to 500, or is it actually a product of the drug itself? So do you find yourself behaving in a way you couldn't conceive of when you weren't on the drug? I think that's
excellent question. Excellent question. And yes, I believe now it's pretty apparent to me. Trend will make you. It's not like people are saying it's just making you more of what you are. I believe 100% without a doubt that trend does not. It changes you completely. Like it can make you a completely different person. I have no doubt about that. I'm not saying that every steroid does that because I don't feel that. I feel that 90% of them don't. But trend can make you 100% someone you're not. And halo testing, I've heard similar things. It didn't affect me that way as much, although I was very irritable. But trend, no doubt, it will change you. It will make you a different person, 100%. You'll look different. You'll think different. You'll be different. There's zero doubt about that to me. And anyone who argues otherwise is lying to themselves. Because I don't know how anyone could argue that. It's not even up for argument, in my opinion. Whereas other compounds like testosterone itself, anavar, that stuff doesn't do that. Trying 100% changes the brain chemistry to such a degree. Your personality is literally completely different. You're a completely different person. All of that. It's trend is the only thing that it's like I could say it's like an actual drug as far as the effects on you mentally. So it's crazy, man. I don't even.
do you then find that it kind of recovers itself when you come off of the cycle, or do you find there's like lasting damage from how you thought when you were on the drug?
Oh, you recover for sure. You can recover. Like as soon as it's cleared out of your system, you'll go back to normal. So that is interesting because the propaganda we always heard over the years is once you take anabolic steroids, you can never get back off. Your body's never going to recover. And myself and Vigorous Steve and Leo Rex, all of us have proven that that's not true at all. I was on for 9 years straight, and my body is completely recovering after just 4 months. So how can you be on for 9 years straight of hard compounds, heavy cycles, and your body recovers 4 months later? Like it's. I'm not condoning people to do things, but it is a myth that you can't recover. That's a scare tactic that people say, and the effects of trend and such on your brain are completely reversed once it's cleared your system. So you obviously it might be a month before it completely clears your system, but a month later you'll be back to normal.
I see. But
So
potentially, obviously, the damage you do on the cycle societally in your relationships may
well
not
that you
be
can't
so
reverse, but
easily repaired.
no. You can lose a lot of relationships on trend, but um, you'll be a different person once it's cleared out of your system. So that is reversible 100%. And I do think some of the negative health impacts. I'm not saying it's good for you because clearly taking 9 years of steroids is not good for you, but I think a lot of it is reversible. Like my kidney functions have rebounded tremendously. My liver functions have rebounded tremendously. My blood pressure is back down to normal. My everything's recovered. So it's like you can bounce back. Maybe it's because I'm still in my late 20s. I'm 29. Maybe that's why I'm at an age where my body is much more resilient. But it's interesting because they always tell you, oh, you're never going to recover after you do this. And that's not true.
No, I think it really is fascinating, and if you guys listening haven't seen some of Pete's blood work posts, I highly recommend going and having a look at them, because, as he says, they're really breaking ground with regards to what your body can do naturally after prolonged exposure to these compounds, right? Um, the next question, though, I want to ask is, obviously, when you use performance enhancing drugs, you get a lot stronger, right? And as you
Yes.
said before, when strength is your world, that is what you attach your self-worth to. It's what you attach the positive aspects of your life to. Um, which is probably why most people, as you said off air, choose to stay on cycle and not, cycle on and off and but blast and cruise, right? How does one then reconcile their identity when they come off and they start to lose strength and lose that image that they've built up for themselves?
That's where it helped me to lose body weight because instead of my focus being on absolute strength and getting the strongest possible, hitting higher numbers than I've read, obviously I realized that wasn't going to be possible when I'm off everything. So the way I mentally handled that was I was like, I'm going to get as light as possible and go for relative body weight PRs. So if I can build my relative body strength as far as being as light as I possibly can and hitting the highest numbers I possibly can, I could potentially hit higher ratios of relative strength than I did when I was deadlifting 395 kilos. So like I looked at it and if I could compete at like 90 kilos and pull 340, 350, that would actually be a higher relative body weight strength ratio as opposed to when I was 110 kilos pulling 395. So I'm almost like, let's recalibrate our brain to get as light as possible, be as healthy as possible, and then pull a higher percentage. So like a 4 times body weight deadlift, as opposed to before where it was like a 3.6 or whatever. That's what I kind of try to do now. And that's allowed me to really still get excited about training.
No, that's awesome. So you've basically, as you say, recalibrated. You've shifted your perspective somewhat so that you haven't abandoned this identity of being strong and powerful, but it's associated with a slightly different metric rather than your
Yes.
absolute strength and the drug induced strength. You have that relative strength and those other goals that you can aim for and that you may not have achieved in the past as well, right? So technically, you are breaking new ground with
Yes.
pulling weight at 90 or 100 kilos. And of course, as you say, you're healthy and you're natural. So then potentially you have PRs there as well, right?
Yes, and that's the other thing. Like I think my best deadlift was 337.5 naturally, and my best bench was like 150. So I'm like, well, if I can get past those, obviously, I don't think you can ever fully claim natural after you've taken stuff, but I'm not on anything except natural supplements. So if I could surpass those numbers, that too would be a huge milestone for me. And that's how I've stayed motivated and been able to. I still train really hard and enjoy it. But if I was like trying to get back to an 870 or 395 kilo deadlift, it wouldn't be it wouldn't make sense because I'm like that's not going to be possible. I'm not going to pull 395 kilos naturally. I know this, So I'm more realistic now, but it's okay. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and it does really come across actually both here in this interview and in in previous posts that you've really become you've reconciled yourself with this perspective, right? And it
Yes.
does seem like you're really enjoying what you're doing, man, and it's awesome to see because god forbid if you had carried on that path and something had happened, right? Not only would you have potentially risked a lot, but also not been able to undergo this mental and emotional transformation with regards to your training as well.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, and I think everything in my brain kind of shifted at the right time. So before it was too late. So I'm pretty happy with the direction things are going right now, and I just want to get other guys on the same path. That's my goal. Because you got to ask yourself seriously: is it like we're taking a decade off your life to be a little bit stronger, or would you rather be not quite as strong as some of these guys but live longer? And that's kind of the perspective you want to have. So everything comes at a price. Everything comes at a price. And I think Eddie Hall and those guys would say, yes, it was worth it to win World's Strongest Man. But if you've noticed, they've all lost a ton of weight and are not on all the drugs anymore and trying to be as strong as possible because they realize the same thing. They really do. They just may not speak about it as much, but they come to terms with the same thing. And Eddie Hall was the one who said if he kept doing this, he'd kill himself. Like he would die. He would die from pushing his body that hard, being 200 kilos and taking all those drugs. So he kind of went all in for World's Strongest Man, and then he's completely backed off because he knew it was a death wish to keep going. So there
Yeah.
are other guys realizing that they just don't publicly talk about it as in depth or to as much of an extent.
Right. And it does, that does seem as well to be a general awareness of both the positive and the negatives of anabolics, right? Because also similarly, as you said earlier, there has been a lot of, misinformation about what they do and what they don't do, and it's good to see some of the, the kind of more medically balanced perspectives coming out. You mentioned Leo earlier, I think, and obviously, more plates, more dates is doing good things for the, to educate people on these things. So I think, as a someone who observes all of you guys, I think it is very, very positive, and I hope that people watching this take this message away as well.
Yeah, and one other interesting point is like I started polling my audience, and like I get 5,000 people answering the poll or whatever, and it's much more relatable to the audience to be natural, and it's much more relatable to the audience when you're in that 90, 100 kilo range, because that's where most of them are. So it was like 82% of my audience was natural. So they can relate and gain more insight, and your content's more valuable when you're not hammering the drugs, because 82% of them aren't even doing that. And then most of them are in that 90 kilo to 100 kilo range. So it's a lot more relatable and a lot more beneficial to people. Whereas when I'm this 115, 120 kilo monster on drugs, no one can relate to that. So
Right.
that's another thing.
Which unfortunately is why the, those 110 kilo monsters attempt to pass themselves off as natural, and then we could create a little bit of a vacuum in social media, which distorts people's perceptions, unfortunately.
A lot of people are lying out there about their doses and about natural and stuff. Um, I mean, I look at like if you really want to say you're natural, get labs done every 4 weeks for 6 months, and we'll find out. Because I mean, you can cycle off stuff, but I can find out real quick if you're natural or not based on your labs. So just general health metrics would show. So if anybody really wants to prove they're natural, go get blood work for 6 months straight every 4 weeks, and we'll figure it out real fast.
um
So
Yeah. Finally, then, when you look back over this period, and it's something you've said a lot during this discussion, is that everything happens for a reason, and this path has been laid down for you to be where you are today. So, looking back, would you change anything that you experienced when you were,
yeah,
at your peak?
100%. I wouldn't have started taking steroids till I was 25. I would have done actual cycles instead of staying on. If I ran trend, I would have done like 6 weeks at a time, pretty neat, instead of like 15 weeks. I would have done much smaller dosages. So there's a ton of stuff I would have changed. But I've learned from it. I feel like I can better help other people because of what I did. So there is some silver lining to that, but there's stuff I would change for sure. And it doesn't eat at me or anything. It's just if I could do it again, I would have done it differently.
And then, to that Eddie Hall question, for you, was it worth it?
I think that kind of ties into the last question. Like, no, because I feel like I could have done just as well without doing all the things I did. Like, I could have had the same following. I could, because most of my basement videos, I was natural. And that's what's funny. That's what built my following up. And for a large percentage of that time, up until I was 20 years old, I was natural. So I think I could have done fine without it, and could have better taken care of my health. So was it worth it? No, but that's hindsight for you. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right. And as you say, you are here now, and you've got a purpose and a mission, and now instead of looking back, you're looking forwards.
Yeah, I think life would have been just as good if I had been more conservative in my approach and not done such extreme things. But that's just being a reckless 20-year-old for you. You're in your 20s just being reckless and thinking you're invincible. I think everybody kind of goes through that in their own way. So it's not like it eats at me, man. Like I definitely would have done some things differently for sure.
Awesome. And now, finally, just to close up, what is next for you going forward? You've touched a little bit on your future goals, but
I wanna try to compete at 90 kilos, and which is kind of crazy because that's literally going down like 4 weight classes. Because I was competing at 125 weight class for my last couple of meets, but I want to try to compete at 90 kilos, and I want to naturally deadlift 340 at 90, and I want to bench 182 and a half at 90. That's my next. Those are my big goals I'm training for right now. And then eventually, I want to deadlift 365 naturally, and I want to bench like 200. And then, if all that happens, I may do a 15-week mile cycle and go for the 410 and 227 and a half. But we'll see. This is a year's plan, not just like literally a couple months or a year. It's like that's a plan for 2 years. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't know. Things can change.
awesome, man. Well, I wish you all the best, and I can't wait to see you, continuously progress. Everyone who's tuned into this, I highly recommend checking out Pete's YouTube and Instagram channels, both in the past for his crazy powerlifting stuff and the basement videos. Seriously, watch those, as well as for the present day educational topics on PEDs, etc. Guys, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. Really has. Thank you for getting on here, and I think we'll wrap it up here.